morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you this morning on WJOP-LP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9 and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm very happy to welcome two people to the show today who are going to talk to us about Link House's new Children and Teen Center for Help, known for short as CATCH. I'm happy to welcome Program Director Carolyn Gayler-Romero and Clinical Supervisor Kael Brooks. Carolyn and Kael, welcome to the morning show, and thank you both so much for taking time to come here to talk to us about this important program. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Well, let's start out by talking about what CATCH is and who it's designed to help.
So we'll do this together. So
Yes.
So it's a program for 5 to 18-year-old youth. We're providing individual therapy at the moment, and then hoping to broaden that for group therapy and some other programs. But essentially, it's a program for mental health, behavioral health of our young people.
Wonderful. Which is so important. We've all been reading about the really not even national but global mental health crisis for children and teenagers. So I was hoping that you could talk to us about what you both see as the contributing factors to this mental health crisis for young people and how you see it showing up in young people's lives.
Whew, that's a huge question. Do you want to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess I can sort of talk about this. So I have kind of got to Link House through a more community aspect. So I was
Yeah.
working under sort of the umbrella of Essex County Asset Builder Network, which is
Okay, I've
located
heard of
here
that.
in Newburyport.
Yes, very important resource.
And that was, essentially doing a lot of, collecting a lot of data of the young
Yeah.
people in the area. And so I was working in Amesbury, and in Amesbury, we had done surveys of youth in 2017, 2019, and 2021, and we're sort of steadily seeing, the numbers, especially in terms of depression and anxiety, increasing over that time period. And so I think it's a really tricky conversation because I think often we want to pinpoint COVID and we want to pinpoint, and we know that exacerbated it and made it a lot worse. The numbers were pretty high and steadily increasing before that. So I can't, pretend to have the answer, but I know things that we had heard, at least in that role, I got to really sit down and talk to youth about, why do you guys think that these numbers are so high? And some of the things that in those conversations students brought up, were academic pressures, feeling like, they really had this path laid out for them and they needed to succeed. And for those who may be neurodivergent or not fitting on that path, it was really hard. We heard things about, the social media pressures, culture, trying to fit in these boxes that may not necessarily fit. We saw a lot of queer youth really struggling, having way higher rates of, depression, anxiety, suicidality. So I don't know that there is one factor, other than there's a variety of factors, and for many, COVID really complicated it and really made it so that the help that was needed years ago kind of got interrupted. I don't know what you would add, but
no, and I would be in agreement with Kael. I think it's a very multifaceted, complex problem with many variables, and I think it can vary region to region, town to town. I mean, I think there's socioeconomically, in terms of ethnic and racial group. We do know, though, that nationally the group with the highest risk of suicidality and self-harm is the LGBTQ group, especially our transgender and non-binary young people. So I think we know where the concerns are, but there's so many things, so many layers. And I think in addition to that, as a mature adult, I'd also say that our adults are not doing so great either, and what within a family we all need to take a look at the whole system.
Well, it's a tumultuous world, and people of every age are feeling that, of course, and young people, in addition to all the things that you've mentioned, some of them, I mean, every teenager has family issues. It just comes with territory.
Absolutely.
And the country's been undergoing a lot of tumult, a lot of crisis, a lot of a lack of feeling of safety. And I think that young people also I often wonder, how do they feel about and think about the future? Because in addition to the issues you've named, which are all pressing and all predate the pandemic, although the pandemic, of course, didn't help because it cut people off. It cut us all off from one another. And we were just talking before the show about how, well, thank God for Zoom for so many reasons, but it's not the same. I was saying I much prefer being here in the studio and having you here personally. It's just different to be able to talk to your friends in person or talk to a teacher or a counselor in person, so that sure didn't help.
No.
But there's also, there are planetary issues. The climate change, which young people, I think, are very attuned to, more attuned to, I think, than adults, really. Because I've talked to young people who will just say, oh, grown-ups, they just think, we'll fix it. We're going to hand it over to you. It's not enough. I did have a climate psychologist on the show once who said, it's just not enough for older people to say to young people, good luck. And of course, school violence is a problem that just doesn't go away. And so, in addition to all the issues you were talking about, these all predate the pandemic, but certainly the pandemic hasn't helped. And I think the isolation and the loneliness, which maybe I hope are getting better, but also I think there's a lingering effect. If you're not in the habit of reaching out to people or feeling comfortable talking to people about what your concerns and problems are, it's something then you need encouragement, I think, to do the message that you're not alone with this, which it strikes me as part of what your program is designed to do. So I'm really glad you came into existence. What I say makes sense to you?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think we could sit here and talk all day about this. I mean, I think I definitely have some opinions, and we have some research, and as you're saying, that for all of the above, there's many factors that influence our young people, but I do think also we've got to start with us, to speak to that example about the environment. We can't just hand it over to the kids and say, go work it out. In this case, we are responsible for them in so many senses, not just because it's a legal responsibility, but, they're our young people. They're the people that are going to be taking care of us in the future. And they're going to be the ones that will be those prosperous and healthy citizens that make the changes and also, affect the things that we want to be affected. So I think we've got to take care of them so that they can go out there and do good stuff.
That's right. It's a gift to us all.
Absolutely, yeah.
And each generation has its responsibilities certainly for the next generation, to create that kind of ongoing legacy. It's the least we can do. So
I think so.
Anyway, so it's wonderful that Catch has come into existence at just the right time. One of the things that you mentioned before and that I've read about your program is that you're family focused. And I was hoping that you could describe what that looks like in your program.
I think it looks different depending on, I think all families are different and all families are comprised differently.
Yeah.
And, for us, sort of our way of thinking about it is, families are a system. So if one person's struggling, everyone else in the family is impacted. So for us to say, hey, we're going to work with this young person and send them right back to a family that's impacted and didn't, also get support is not going to be effective. And it's not going to be effective for either the young person or the family. So, our hope is to try to provide some of that wraparound and really partner with, we do already, Link House has an adult outpatient mental health center to be able to work with them to make sure everyone in the family is supported. So that looks differently depending on different families. I mean, that looks like there's people in, Link House programs and their children are coming to see us and they're getting support on both ends. In some instances, that looks like families where we're seeing 4, 2 of the children and the parents also coming in and getting services. I mean, it looks different for different families, but it really is trying to figure out how do we wrap around and support every member and really involving any of the community partners, collaterals, anyone else working with them so that they really have support, hopefully from as many angles as possible.
Well, that makes perfect sense, because if there's one link that is in pain, you can work with other links, but they have to all get well together. Or there'll be, as you're describing it, it'll be impactful around the whole system, emotional system of the family. So it sounds as though, you know, a key to then what family focus means is you pay attention to everybody in the family, understanding that everyone affects everybody else. And I think you have multidisciplinary teams then that enable you to do that. So could you talk to us a little bit about how your teamwork goes?
Well, we're a small team right now, so we're working really closely.
Are you it?
Well, we're not just it, but
We have a few more.
yeah, we have a few
Well,
more.
two make a team.
But we're probably at the beginning of that. So,
But you have aspirations.
we do have aspirations. So we have the two of us who, you know, basically leading our program currently in conjunction with Link House and with the outpatient facility for the adults, which is CB Hats, which is fortunately enough is across the parking lot, which I think also speaks to the way that you really want to focus on those family systems and be able to support people adequately. We only have to cross the parking lot.
Well, that's not too far.
Yeah. So and what we'd like to do is have the convenience for any parent or caregiver that they can just walk across the parking lot for their own support. But to speak to a specific team, well, I'm the program director. Kael's our clinical supervisor, so she's supervising, you know, the clinical work of our two therapists. We have two full-time therapists currently.
Wonderful.
One of them is a Spanish-speaking bilingual therapist, and the other one is very focused on the needs of much younger children. And then we are hoping to have soon a nurse practitioner for the medication management.
Oh, terrific.
And then we would love to expand and have more therapists on board, you know, just based on the needs, because we're already
hiring.
we're already advertising. Actually, this is a good spot to say that we are already advertising.
We'll get the word out.
Yeah. We would love to have people that are, you know, focused like we are on supporting young people with a passion for that and some creativity and imagination about what they do. I think the other person we have is our front desk coordinator, and she's managing all the intake process and working with the clients, you know, before they come to us, but also which is really, really important, you know, that welcoming process, and she's a big part of our team. And then we are hoping to be able to partner with other providers. For example, I have a yoga therapist that I would like to have come in and provide some of that trauma-informed yoga. We've also met with Jen Wright in West Newbury, who has Fair Winds Farm, which is offering equine therapy.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so we did some training with her, and
Wonderful.
we're really hoping that we'll be able to connect some of our young people. Again, it's about funding, but we'd really like to be able to do that, a trauma-informed equine therapy. We're also looking at running some groups, and again, we would have, you know, grandparent groups, groups of parents, LGBTQ and transgender and non-binary support groups. So we would also like to bring in more people to be able to do those things in addition to what we provide. And we're very open to suggestions, and we're very open to having people, you know, offer what they can. And also music therapy. There was another somebody who provides hip-hop music production, who's very happy to come join us. We'd like to be able to do all those things because we have a huge group space. So
wonderful.
Yeah, so we'd like to be able to bring in people to provide those additional therapies.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is very exciting.
Very exciting.
And a quick shout out for Link House for having the vision to be able to do that, and to have to not be too conformist about how we should provide what we need to the young people, to be open-minded to different therapies and different ways of approaching the needs of young people.
Well, yeah, because mental health is a mind-body thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And talk therapy and individual and group is wonderful, but there's also a kind of a magic to things like music. And I was a volunteer for a while at Windrush Farm, you know, which does equine therapy, similar to and Jen Wright.
That's where Jen Wright's coming from.
That's right.
Yeah.
She was on the show a few years ago, and I think that it was wonderful to watch the kids on those horses.
Yeah.
Because they were getting to do something that is very special, very tactile. And this rhythm of the movement of the horse is its own therapeutic intervention, just moving along with the horse. And also, they were getting to do something that most kids didn't get to do, which was wonderful all by itself. So it was kind of a magical place. That and yoga therapy and movement and accessing the body, and because those neurochemicals respond to movement. And so it just sounds exciting.
It is exciting.
And you may be a team of 2 now, but you're in on the ground floor of something.
We're a team of 5.
That's right.
We're a team of 5.
That's right. But you're all then in on the ground floor of something that sounds like it's just very exciting, and very inspiring and hopeful too.
I think so. I think that we're very. I feel very grateful to Link House for having the vision, Gary Gayler and Chris Turner to have and the board for having the vision to be able to fund what we're doing, at least for now.
Absolutely.
We will be looking for some more funding, but that I feel very thankful for, because there's a high need, but the enthusiasm and the imagination that's been going into it has been very, very impressive. I go to work full of joy,
which is a great way to feel, and Carolyn, I think that when the people who work for an organization feel that sense of joy and passion for the work they're doing, that telegraphs to the people who come to you. It absolutely does. It's like a ripple effect. And so that's healing, I think, in and of itself. So that's really wonderful. And of course, big shout out to Link House. Gary Gassman and Christine Turner have both been on this show in the past. Christine, when they started the important outpatient program. And I think it's just a visionary organization that has its finger on the pulse of the community and what's needed, and then has the energy and the tenacity to just keep working away at finding new solutions for the problems that the community is experiencing. And so I give Link House great credit. They're a wonderful asset for our community, so double shout out.
No, thank you. I'll keep doing it.
Impressive. It's been impressive to see the response, having come from the opposite end, where I was part of the community saying, oh my gosh, this is a problem, what do we do? To then being able to, see Link House's response, and then on the flip side, now be able to join in that response. It's been really cool to see, because it's really has been sort of a community data driven decision that they were like, all right, well, listen, so
let's do it.
That's really exciting. That's really exciting for me, and makes me really hopeful for the needs that we continue to hear of.
Absolutely.
And that data is available online too. What's the site where that is, in case people are interested?
That data is available on Newburyport Youth Services has it on their website. Regionally, Amesbury Pact has it on their website, and there's different. Triton has some data as well, as does Georgetown, but the Essex County Asset Builder has the regional data. So I'm much more familiar personally with the Amesbury, because that's the piece that I was sort of involved in. But that each town is available, regionally is available, to kind of best understand, what the youth are reporting.
Absolutely.
But I think for us, that also has really driven where we really want to specialize and where we want to focus, and trying to make it based on what the kids are saying, not just what we're wanting.
Right.
So
that's right.
That's been, I think, the piece that I've been really most excited about with Link House, is really trying to say, okay, this is what the kids are reporting, so this is what we're going to try to provide.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've read, and you've talked somewhat about your desire to be connected to the community and to partner with other organizations. And I was hoping you might say, you've already talked about that a little bit, but I was hoping you might say a little bit more about what other organizations you're currently collaborating with, or what your visions are for, for connections you want to make.
Well, quite a few partnerships, really. So apart from you, we've been going into all the public schools in the area. So we've been into schools in Georgetown, we've been into Pentucket schools, we've been into Triton schools, Amesbury, Newburyport, trying to access where the kids are being referred from generally, because it is mostly coming from the schools, and of course that's my background also, so I was really aware of the needs coming from the schools. We've also been working with Pettingill House, Jeannie Geiger Crisis Centre, We're working in partnership with organisations like PACT and the Beacon Coalition, and we're part of a bigger organisation, BEST too, as well as the Asset Builder Network, which I always get the words the words in the wrong order. But those are just some that I've personally been involved in, or being, going to meetings and trying to partner with, and I think if is there any others that I might have missed, Kael, that you've been
I think those are the
with?
big ones. Right now we're sort of piloting a partnership with Amesbury Public Schools, and trying to really provide some support to students within the school system, within the school day, especially for the young people who don't necessarily have reliable transportation, or parents who might have outside commitments that are going to prevent them from getting a kid consistently to our building. So we're just trying to kind of get creative about how we can fill those gaps and what that looks like. So, this week I got to see kids in a couple different schools, which was great.
Wonderful.
So, that's sort of a pilot, and we're going to see how it goes, but just sort of trying our best to figure out what creative ways to meet the need. Because I think the unfortunate piece is there are limited after-school hours, and we can't meet all the need between 3 and 6 p.m.
Right,
It's not possible. So trying
Yeah.
to figure out really what we can do to provide the best services in the most efficient ways. And I think we've had really we've just been met with so much eagerness. There's been a lot of enthusiasm, and
I'll bet.
schools and community programs have been amazing in their partnerships already, and we're just sort of off the ground, so that'll keep growing.
It strikes me that as we were saying, the need is so great. I'm sure that they're welcoming you with open arms.
They're running to us.
Help is on the way. But also it
We're
strikes
just
me
5 right now.
and for that, you've been really busy, in other words. Doesn't sound like there's been much downtime in there. But of course, the need is great. You both are clearly committed and dedicated to making sure that help is on the way. So that's really wonderful. Well, I wanted to ask you about, tell us something about what to look for people who are family or friends or teachers or counselors or just community connections with young people. What are some of the early warning signs that a young person might be in distress, that they might be experiencing mental health issues? They might not be talking about them. But what are some of the early warning signs to look for? And then how might people approach them to talk about it?
Well, I think you speak to that talking and being open and making time for each other is really, really important, because I think before we go into signs and symptoms, I think the really important thing is just to make time for each other. And make time isn't necessarily taking your child to an event or to an after-school activity. It's actually just being present, so that child feels that they can actually speak to you when you're not busy or distracted. So I think that, we have to start with that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the parent or an immediate caregiver. It can be also within the schools, it can be extended family, it can be other people in that child's life. And I think that I would say that that's the most important thing, is to be present and to try to be aware and connect and listen. Not jump in, as we often do as adults, jump into problem solve or jump in with our opinions or dismiss. I think it's really just listening and being present is really, really important. But in terms of signs and symptoms, we're really good at collaborating. So if I miss something, I'm sure Kael will jump in. It's, just really things like withdrawal. I think that was, what you said is withdrawal would be, a really important sign. Somebody that has started to not enjoy the things that they used to enjoy, withdrawing from those activities and people around them. And I know that, the moody teen is what we like to joke about, but I think it is really important to observe that, especially if it's a sudden shift. Irritability, negativity in terms, we're all I can be quite negative. I'm English, so I've got a lot of critical feedback in my head. But I think, just a shift in the way that person communicates, the withdrawal, the irritability, sadness in terms of crying, feelings of hopelessness, anything like that, not wanting to go to school, feeling that they're overwhelmed by school, that everything around them is becoming more difficult than it used to be. Appetite loss might also be something, or increased weight that's rapid, sleep difficulties, disinclination to do anything like exercise or get outdoors. I think also, sadly, managing social media and technology is quite difficult for us. And I think as my generation in particular, because I didn't grow up with so much, I'm not always very expert in knowing how to manage that. And I think that's a struggle for parents to know what is enough, but withdrawing into your technology and using that as a prop and as a means to cope without any other coping skills is also something I think we need to be aware of. I don't know if you've got anything else to add.
Yeah,
you probably have, because you're so expert.
Hardly, but I think the other thing I was thinking about as you were talking about that is really any of those forms of, I look at social media use as numbing, right? It's just a way of distracting. And, I think one thing, I am also a licensed drug and alcohol counselor, so I spend a lot of my time with kids who are numbing in other ways. And I see that as a huge red flag, too, of I'm reaching for all these variety of things, and that may be food, it may be technology, it may be a video game, it may be a substance. But anytime we're all prone to numb, right? But anytime we're reaching for something external to try to make ourselves feel better internally, that raises a little bit of a red flag. Of what's going on internally.
So a couple things that pull out from both of your excellent kind of descriptions of what to look out for. One of them is a lack of balance, that there's something extreme about something a young person might be engaging with that seems to draw them out of a balance of activities in their life, that is something to look out for, because it's possible to even likely that it's become their coping strategy for something emotional that's brewing within them. And the other one is just changes in their behavior or how you're used to experiencing them, as well as perhaps some kind of like irritability or sadness or emotions that you can see that seem like they're different in their level or intensity from what you're accustomed to observing. And then I like the way, Carolyn, you put it about the importance of listening. Listening is more important than talking. You have to be present, but listening is a form of presence.
Absolutely.
And listening is an invitation to open up. I'm curious, I wanted to ask you both about, because in the past, there's been a stigma about mental health issues, about acknowledging that you might be feeling depressed or anxious or even sad, because there are certain pressures in our culture to seem okay, especially during those teen years, I think. And I wondered, that was very true in the past. I'm curious to find out, do you think that's gotten any better? Has the preponderance of young people with more and more issues and more and more reasons, as we were saying, to feel, upset, or is there still a stigma attached to admitting that you need or would benefit from help? And if so, do you have any suggestions about how to help young people, or maybe their parents or other adults who still feel that? Just, do you feel like that's gotten better? And or do you have any advice for people about how to think differently about reaching out for help?
Oh, I have so much to say on that topic.
Then I'm glad I asked you about it.
We'll
because
collaborate.
I think it's an important one.
Yeah, we'll collaborate. I think the first thing is there's a lot of variability in that. I mean, this is a really, not coming from here. This is a continent, really, and I think culturally, regionally, there are whether or not you're rural and whether or not you're in the city, your educational background. I think there's so much variability with that, so I think it's hard to say if it's definitively better or not. Because there's so many different variables. I would say that a lot of young people, and I'm coming from the public schools that I've worked with, I think they have more vocabulary than we had perhaps growing up. Maybe not Kael, actually. Than many of us did. I mean, I was an English major, so it was all about words and feelings. But I think for a lot of the young people, they're more, and I think this is maybe where, when we think about balance, where social media has been beneficial in some ways too, because it can enhance that connectivity and the ability to find people that are using that language around mental health, and that to know that, you know, I'm not isolated. So I think in those terms, our young people have more vocabulary than perhaps we did. As regards stigma, the stigma, it's again, there's so much variability. I think it's hard to say if it's better or not. We do have more resources than we did in the past, and we've increased the conversations. We have more research, we have more pharmaceutical interventions. I think that we definitely have more of that, but I think we have a really long way to go until, you know, we're reaching everybody, and we're showing compassion where compassion is due. And that also speaks to substance use. And, you know, 50 years of Link House is, I mean, it's a wonderful thing to celebrate that this organisation's been around, but it's been around because there's an ongoing need for substance use support. Support for our people that are in recovery or in treatment. And that's something with our young people I think we really need to think hard about. So I have so much to say. I think, Kael, do you want to add something? Because I just think that it's just there's a lot of variability, but...
No, I would fully agree. I don't think, I don't know that we can say, I think in some ways for some people it's gotten easier, and for some ways for others it's gotten harder. And, there's lots of positive media, there's lots of negative media. There's not necessarily, and I hear from kids all the time, of like, oh, if people know I'm in therapy, they'll think I'm dumb, they'll think I'm weak, they'll think, so we know that stigma surely exists. I think at least the conversation I try to have, and I do think your piece of the language, more schools are having these conversations, more teachers are having these conversations. And, I guess the piece, the way I always try to approach it, at least personally, is that normalizing we all have health and we all have mental health. And that's not to say, like, that's a universal thing, right? We all have a concept of wellness, and even just, being cautious of the language we use and not necessarily pathologizing someone for, we all struggle, right? We all make unhealthy choices. We all make great choices. We all have good connections. We have not so great, right? Like there's a universality to it. And, when I talk to kids, it's trying to like normalize that in a way of like, we've all made hard choices and we've all made good ones. And sometimes we all feel really down. And there are obviously degrees of that, and support is needed, but of sort of normalizing the conversation a little bit more.
I like the way you put that, just normalizing the state of being. Because we all do experience times of sadness or anxiety or depression. We all do experience times of loneliness and isolation. And what it takes to admit that is courage, not weakness. It's a huge strength, and it takes a lot of bravery to reach out and to be honest with yourself and with others about the fact that, hey, I'm a human being and I have emotions and I can get help and I can feel better. And so there's hope at the end of the line. So it's worth the effort to overcome the stigma. And so you both have been very eloquent about that. Thank you for that. I'm glad you asked you.
And I do feel very hopeful. As I said, I feel joyful when I go to work because I know that we're doing really great work, and then we're spreading the wings of and the access that our young people have, but it is also affecting the adults, and I think that's really, really important. Is that we, when you talked about family systems earlier and asked about who we're partnering with and how we're supporting families, it's really important. This education and this kind of acceptance we have to work on the whole of that system, and just make it possible for people to talk when they need to, and to be listened to, and educate where we can. And I think the schools, coming from the public schools, I think they're doing a phenomenal job trying to do that. It's just a question of resources, and they also are in the business of educating young people for their lives. So it's going to be multifaceted. Again, it's going to be all of us working together, and programs like yours are also really important for just continuing those conversations and giving a wide variety of people access to the language and to the discussion.
Well, you brought us to the last question I wanted to ask you, because we've established Catch is doing wonderful and important work all throughout the community, connecting with many different organizations and providing many different kinds of services to help people. So how can people gain access to Catch?
Well, there's a variety of ways. We're situated at Boston North Technology Park on 110 in Amesbury. That's where our office is, and we are also we have a website, which is, you can go to the Link House website and connect through there. But also we have our own site now. It's wellkidsnow.org.
Wellkidsnow.org.
Yeah. And also we have a telephone number. So
please share it.
It is. No, I always forget about the telephone now because we're not using those so much. But 978-545-4004. And there's a whole range of people that you can speak to. But again, 978-545-4004. We also have email addresses. I'd be happy to have emails from anybody that would like to email me. And that's C-Romero at, I was going to say Catch, but it's not. It's C-Romero, which is C-R-O-M-E-R-O at linkhouseinc.org. So
Linkhouseinc.org.
Yeah, linkhouseinc.org, O-R-G. And Kael, do you want to share yours? Or
Sure.
Just online.
Or do we
have
have a Catch one
we
too,
have the
so
Catch
that's probably
one.
if people are having inquiries about,
Yeah.
might this be the right fit for me?
No,
Might
we
I be
right.
seeking
that one.
services?
Yeah.
That one is Catch, so C-A-T-C-H at linkhouseinc.org.
Catch at linkhouseinc.org.
Yep, .org.
I
Wonderful.
always forget the ink, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful, wonderful program, and it's been wonderful and really fun and enlightening to talk to both of you. I can't thank you enough for coming on the morning show to share your insights and perspectives and your knowledge, and also information about what Catch is doing. It's very exciting, it's inspiring, and it is joyful and hopeful. So thank you so much for that. Just good to know you're over there across the parking lot.
Thank you so much.
Not too far. Carolyn and Kael, thank you for
Thank you.
visiting the
It's been
morning show. I hope you come back when things are further along and give us an update on how things are going. So you have an open invitation.
Thank you. We'll come back in the spring. How
All
about
right, that sounds good. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's really just been a joy to have you there. I'm really glad you're across the parking lot doing such important and hopeful work.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks, Mary.
well, that's it for today, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. Till then, be well.